Retirement for Life. Your passport to a comfortable and confident retirement. The podcast that's equal parts education and entertainment, where we break down the retirement maze with a dash of fun and a heap of wisdom from your host, Christian Sear CPA, the passionate retirement specialist and president of Sear Financial Wealth Advisors, the independent registered investment advisor specializing in the AIM retirement system.
Everybody, this is Chris. Welcome to the Retirement for Life podcast show. This is episode 22, and I'm super excited today. It's the first time we've ever had an Emmy Award winner on the show. Really quickly, 30 seconds. I had somebody a listener ask me, why do you have a drum behind you? And this drum is symbolic of one of my loves. Everything on this shelf is something I love. Golf, numbers, investing, balance, blah, blah, blah. But the drums, I got my first drum set when I was 5 years old. It was a Sears and Roebuck drum set. My mom and dad got it for me. I played that thing nonstop. It was from Sears and Roebuck. It was not a professional set, it was a kid set. I beat those things so hard and so long that the paper skins, like on the tom-toms right here, were destroyed. So my dad, who was always looking for ways to make things better, took off the skins and cut out OSB wood. He put the wood in place of the paper, and I played on wooden skins. It would have sounded like this. That's what I did for probably another 6 months until, guess what? I played those drums so long that they also started to deteriorate. They started breaking apart. I broke the wood with my own wooden drumsticks. So then the next step for Dad was to cut out tin, little thin tin, and he put tin on the drums, and then it sounded like this. So this went on for 2 years, and when I was 7 years old, I finally got my first professional drum set, which sounded like that. Anyway, so thanks for asking the question, why is there a drum behind me? Because I've been a drummer for 46 years, and I love it. Hey, today I want to tell you the story of our guest. My dad grew up, I grew up with my dad as a gardener. I have an appreciation for gardening. I used to despise it, but I've learned as I've gotten older how much I love gardening. Retirees, I have been preaching on this podcast in my seminars when I talk to clients about having purpose in life, having things to do to keep you occupied. This one, gardening, is a 2-for-1, killing two birds with one stone, right? Because what did we say? We had the top 5 things that we should be doing in our last podcast. Okay, if you listened, I said you have to be active. And what else? Was another one of the things was have purpose. This topic, gardening, kills two birds with one stone. You know when you're out there in the garden for an hour, your heartbeat is up? Do you know it's healthy for you when you're outside, walking around, getting fresh air, walking around, digging in the dirt? It's a way to elevate the heart rate. What we said was, you have to elevate your heart rate 30 minutes a day. Well, this is a good way to do it. And the second point, having purpose, the studies show, clinical studies show, that you, as a retiree, if you do not have at least, at a minimum, 3 serious items of purpose in your life, 3 things that absolutely make you want to wake up and go do whatever that is. Gardening is that. And so I met with Joe Gardner, and we talked for about 20 minutes in this show today. He's amazing. When I was doing my research on Joe, I realized he's written books. I realized he's done a podcast for over 10 years. I realized he is perhaps the most well-known gardener in the United States of America. I realized he has more than one TV show on PBS that he's been on for years. I learned that his TV show that he came up with, that he is basically in charge of, he's the star of, won an Emmy Award. So We had a great conversation. If you don't like gardening, you still need to listen to it because some of the things he says are fascinating, like what you should be doing right now at this time of year to your garden. And think about, if you are a gardener, you're definitely going to listen. If you're not, think about this. You know, we did an experiment, and Brooke, you remember this? It was, tell me what I made you do.
You've made us all go out and buy our own plant to put on our desk.
Every single employee at Sear Financial, this was years ago, had to have a plant on their desk. And you know why? Because, do you remember why, Brooke? You probably don't remember why I made you do this.
I don't know. Happiness?
Look it up. If you have a plant in your vicinity, you are happier. I'm not making this up. It's a fact. And so the person who kept the plant alive for the longest won some sort of gift. I don't even remember what it was. But look, this is going to make you happier. This is something you should consider doing. I personally garden. It's a great joy. You know, you go out into the garden, all the white noise in your life, when you walk outside and you just start picking the tomatoes, when you just kind of like start digging a little dirt, you get your hands dirty, it makes you peaceful and it makes you happy. So dig in for this interview with Joe Gardner. It was fascinating, and let's get started. Hope you enjoy it. Everybody, today we are talking to Joe Lample, Joe Gardner as he's better known. He's been on the likes of NBC, Today Show. He's written books. He's done almost 400 episodes of his podcast. One of the most well-known gardeners in the United States of America is on our show today. Joe, hi, how are you doing?
I'm good. Other than my voice not being there with me, not a good thing not to have for a podcast interview, but I'll do my best. But I'm loving this time of the year. I'm loving the current weather. I love what I do. So hopefully we'll talk about some of those things. And I think it helps with the attitude.
Amen. You know, I saw that you are an Emmy-winning PBS series host. Tell me about that.
I am the host of 3 national television shows on gardening. And after the first 2, I'd been at it a while, but, you know, I was realizing that although I loved what I did and we were shooting and talking about cool stuff and seeing neat places, the most important thing was not happening. And that was inspiring people to garden in an environmentally responsible way. And there was no show out there doing that back in 2010 when I started that show. And if I didn't do it, who would do it? Because I think I was best poised for it. I was in the industry. I was on television. I was recognized. I had the passion in the ethos to help people respect and appreciate nature and understand what we can do to right our wrongs going forward. So Growing a Greener World, the television series, was born from that inspiration. I took a year off in 2009 to come up with the idea on how I wanted to shoot it. And we hit the ground running. And in that first year, it was a big success. So it took off and 95% of the country was watching it. And in our 8th season, we did an episode that really stood out. And it was nominated and picked for an Emmy Award for our lifestyle program and the production and the hosting. And it was
wow.
It's a lot harder.
You are officially the first Emmy Award winner on the Retirement for Life podcast. Hopefully not the last.
Right. There'll be another. Or a few.
How did you get started in gardening? How did you get this passion, this ethos in this area? It's got to be an interesting story. Where did you start? According to a recent study, the average American feels like they need nearly $1.5 million to retire comfortably. That's a 53% increase compared to the same study just 4 years ago. But is that the right number for you? And are you doing everything you can to maximize your financial situation? The AIM Retirement Assessment can help you figure that out. This free assessment is a simple 3-step process. Answer a few questions about yourself. Spend 15 minutes discussing your situation with one of our retirement specialists, and then we get to work. You'll receive a customized report detailing your exposure to the 7 biggest risks in retirement and the 3 most impactful action items you can take to supercharge your retirement. And if you already have a financial plan, this assessment will help you see what real retirement planning looks like. Get your AIM assessment today and see the difference between a financial generalist and a retirement specialist. Go to aimassessment.com today to get started. That's aimassessment.com.
I grew up in Miami, Florida, and I was the youngest of 4 boys. 5 years separated me and my next oldest brother. And so when I was 8 years old, my brothers were off doing whatever they do, and they're 5 years older than me and beyond. They have their buddies. And, I had mine, but on weekends, I kind of cherished that time because Dad, who worked during the week faithfully 9 to 5 plus, every weekday, he had a big job to do at home on the weekends. And that was to cut our grass and edge the driveway and trim the bushes and, all the stuff that you got to do as a weekend warrior. And lucky for me, all my brothers were off doing their thing. So I had Dad all to myself and I loved it. So I would just follow him around and I'd do anything he asked me to do. And at the end of one Saturday, he was done. And it was about maybe 3:00 in the afternoon. I had a lot of energy in me running around, accidentally tripped over one of the branches or one of the plants he'd just gotten finished pruning and shaping. And this branch broke off. And I thought, oh no. And I didn't want to get caught or in trouble. Not that anything would have happened, not with my dad.
Mm-hmm.
But pridefully, I just wanted to not hurt his feelings, I guess. So I didn't know what to do, but I dug a hole by the base of the plant, shoved the branch in, covered it up with dirt, and then I went about my business. And then I don't know how long it was after that. I'm going to say 2 months, but I came back by that bush and it jogged my memory that was somewhere down there is where I broke that branch, and I was looking to see what happened to it, but I couldn't find it because it wasn't dead. It had sprouted new leaves and it started making roots. And I thought, what has happened? And honestly, that was like it was yesterday. I remember that was when I knew I needed to know more. And every day that I was immersed in that led to another day of wanting to know more than the day before and so forth. And here we are a few decades in between now to real time. And I'm still that way. I love everything about it. I love nature. I love the mystery of it. I love that we can't control any of it, but we can try. And I love the challenge. And I love that no 2 days are the same. Life is so interesting when you're a gardener.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love your attitude. I love your story. My charge, Joe, is very simply in the last 30 days, I've been making shows on this. I had a retirement gala. I told every one of my retirees 2 weeks ago, we need purpose in our retirement. Our retirement is not the end of our story. It's just our next chapter. But we know that we need things to keep us occupied, give us purpose, hobbies, traveling, all of these things. My story about gardening, and the reason I'm so happy you are on our show today, is that my story related to gardening goes something similar to yours, at least in the fact that my father was involved. He used to always come home from work, he'd change, and almost immediately he'd go to the backyard. We had this garden. He had a big garden. Okay, I don't know. It's probably not as big as yours, Joe. You probably have 18 million gardens, but he would go back there. And I as a young man, I would look back and I'd wonder, what's my dad really doing back there? He's picking weeds and there's some rhubarb and there's some tomatoes. And it's been an hour now and the guy's just sitting in dirt, and God. And I just always thought it was kind of funny. And I never thought much of it. And I, like you, had a great experience with mom and dad. My dad was certainly an inspiration for me growing up. The most ironic thing, though, Joe, is that now, fast forward, me, a middle-aged man, maybe past middle age, whatever, guess what I do when I get home from work?
What you did?
I walk right to that garden. There's something about it. So I really want my retirees to explore this avenue because I just think, and you can tell me, there's physical and mental health benefits of gardening, or is that stretching the truth?
No.
What's your thoughts on that?
I don't know that I'd have the sanity to sit here right now if I wasn't gardening.
I mean, you seem pretty happy, so it must be pretty darn good.
I love it. Okay. I've been gardening a lot of decades now, and I can't wait to get out in the garden in the morning. It's the first thing I do when the sun comes up. I've got my coffee and I can't wait to go out in the garden. And I walk out there, and it's not that it's like it the first time I've been out there, but it's as if it's the first time I've been out there. It's different than yesterday. and tomorrow's going to be different than today. And I love that. And then at night, it's like that. But, if you turn off the noise of life, because there's a lot of noise out there, and you go out there, just one with nature, one in the garden, and stop and listen and look and just appreciate what is before you. And it doesn't have to be in a big garden. It can be on your balcony with a few plants. But nature's amazing like that. And the design behind all of that, we'll never get our heads around it. But I'm so thankful that it's so expansive and so beyond my ability to comprehend that it keeps it exciting and it keeps me in awe. And if that's how I end my life, it doesn't get any better than that. When I'm out there, I'm not thinking about money. I'm thinking about, I can't, I just can't get my head around this. This is so
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I always describe my most peaceful times when the white noise of our life is gone. And that's amazing. Now, if I'm trying to encourage my listeners, my retirees to get more involved, I have to point them to your website. We'll talk about that. That is joegardner.com. You guys can go there later. But the front of your website is fantastic. Whoever came up with this, I don't know if you're the PR guy, Joe. I don't know who came up with
A
this,
collective effort.
but grow like a pro, no experience required, just 5 easy steps away from your best garden ever. Now, what are the tips if people are interested in getting started at a garden that maybe they haven't even thought about something like this? What do they even get started?
Get the self-imposed hurdles out of the way. A lot of people that I talk to of all ages have not gotten around to gardening yet because they think they don't know enough, or they think they don't know how to do it, or they don't think they have the right this or that, and they're afraid they're going to make a mistake. Well, let me tell you, you're not going to be a gardener until you make mistakes. That's how
That's
you
right.
learn. And I've made more than anybody, and I hope I make a lot more in the rest of my life, because
It's like starting a podcast. Just get started and figure out
it
what you're
is, it
screwing
is.
up
You
as you
figure it out
go.
as you go. And,
Yeah.
if you did everything right, how would you get better? Because you wouldn't know what went
Be
wrong
boring.
and think about what you need to do to change that to fix it. That's what I want to know. I want to know why that didn't germinate, or why I couldn't propagate that, or whatever that answer is. How to make that tomato plant grow better next year, Those are the things I
Yeah.
want to know. So
Isn't it a great feeling seeing something that you've done actually grow? It's like having a child
it is
almost.
like having a
It's
child. That's
something to
why
be
they call
proud
it
of.
a nursery, and that's why I love seed starting so much. There's nothing about gardening I don't love, but if I had somebody pin me down and said, "What's your favorite thing?" I would put seed starting probably at the very top, and because it's the one thing that will blow your mind every time. And I've been starting seeds my whole life, but I still can't. I mean, I understand the science behind it, but I can't understand how seed knows to sit in that bag for years, and then you take it out, or it's in the ground and it's exposed to everything, but all of a sudden it grows. But like when you sow that seed, why didn't it germinate before now? What did I do differently? But things like that. And no,
Hmm.
it's just a million ahas. A million.
So my dad, I hate to go back to my dad, he volunteers a lot of his time, and everyone that he volunteers with, he just hands out packets of seeds. That's what he does. He just, here's some seeds, here's your Christmas gift this year. It's different seeds, and it's just fantastic. Okay, but the point of this is I can get started easy, right? It's not a big deal. It's something that can be healthy for us mentally, physically, getting out in the garden. It's not that difficult to start. Now, what about if we have physical limitations? I mean, can we adapt our gardening practices as we go? How does that work?
Absolutely. People are dialed into that. It's a recognized challenge and a legitimate one, as opposed to many of the ones that we make excuses for. Physical limitations certainly can impact how you garden, but it doesn't prevent you from gardening. You just have to adjust. And so maybe it's not bending over to the ground to sow a seed. Maybe it's getting an elevated raised bed where you don't have to bend over at all. All you got to do is reach out. There's a lot of beds like that. There's a lot of gardening opportunities like that, maybe it's a container or a large pot or a grow bag, something to get it up, something to get it closer to you. Um, maybe it's your patio and your balcony and you don't even have a place to dig in the soil in the ground, but you have a place to dig in a pot on your balcony or deck, and that's gardening, man. That is, there's no definition that says gardening is defined
You're
by
doing it.
a plot in the ground. It's nurturing plants and sowing seeds. That's what gardening is.
Now, you tell me if I'm crazy. Approximately 5 years ago, I think there's 11 people in the office where we work, Sear Financial Wealth Advisors. Now, approximately, Brooke, how long ago did I make everyone have a plant? Would you say? Was that about 5 years ago?
Yeah.
About 5 years ago, I had this crazy idea, Joe, that everyone would be happier if there was a plant at their desk side. And I gave a bonus to the person who kept their plant alive the longest. Now, was I being crazy? Was that a silly idea, or is there some merit to that thought, that notion?
That was brilliant.
See?
I mean,
Thank you.
I'm telling
Tell
you,
my wife that.
that was brilliant. People take ownership of that, and then you've got the competition on top of it, and the bonus at the end of it all. Who doesn't want to do everything they can to keep that plant going? That is a vested interest if I ever heard of one. And the side benefit to that, which actually probably is the biggest benefit, is a newfound interest and a passion and something they can do rather than put on Netflix or in addition to. And you might have been the seed starter of that. You might have been the one to sow the seed into that changed life.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Except shout out to my co-host Andrea, who's not on today. She admittedly is just really good at killing plants, and she was the first loser, I'm pretty sure. But so now I want to shift gears a little bit here. It is the fall. As we enter this season, my favorite season, there's just so many things to be thinking about. Gardening doesn't end in the fall. Tell me, fall versus spring. What are the things we should be thinking about this time of year? Leaves are falling from the trees. What should be on our mind and during the fall when we're gardening?
I call fall the beginning of the next gardening season because when spring gets here, it's too late to start getting ready. It's it's a freight train coming down the track. You see it off in the distance in February, March, and you blink and it's running you over in April. And if you're not thinking about, what I want to do in next spring and fall of the prior year, you need to, because there's a lot that you can be doing to get ready so that when that train gets in front of you, literally, you're ready. And you don't have time otherwise if you haven't prepared. And I differentiate between planters and planners when it comes to gardening.
Mm,
And planters are scrambling like crazy all the time, and they're always behind the 8 ball. They're always chasing something. They're always fixing something. They're reactive to whatever is presented, whether it's a problem, a disease, a pest, something. Versus the planners are proactive and they're anticipating, they're thinking ahead, they're reading, they're asking questions, they're listening to podcasts, they're writing it down, and they're excited too, And so in fall, be thinking about that. And also
okay.
in real time in the fall, if we've got property and we have trees, chances are we got leaves falling on them, and that's going to connote some extra work for somebody. And I would say take comfort in knowing, if you don't know this, we've learned a lot of information over the past few years as far as the industry and naturalists and people that track wildlife habitats and so forth. And we now know that in those fallen leaves, there are many, many caterpillars and wildlife that animals that we love depend on, such as birds, where 97% of their diet are caterpillars. And so if
Mm,
we're worried about cleaning up the yard and getting those leaves off our property and into a bag so the trash truck can take them away, what do the birds eat in the spring? Why can't we just leave the leaves on our property, but put them into beds or back in the woods or in under the trees, out of the way, but not off the property, you know?
okay. Leaves, nature's gift.
Yeah.
Let them do their job. Yeah.
I've said it.
Okay.
Leaves are nature's gift to gardeners. They are.
Okay. We could go so much deeper here. I have to say I've listened to several of your podcasts, and I'm about to ask you a silly, simple question, but I need to get it off my chest. Before I do, though, because there's so much you have to offer. As I listen to a lot of the shows you're on, a lot of your work, you have so much information. And as a retirement show, we're obviously just scratching the surface of your experience, your knowledge, your wisdom on gardening and all the advantages we talked about. But if people want to know more, want more Joe Gardner, where's the best place to go to see, listen, hear, and get your wisdom and more of your sage advice on this topic?
There's 5 places, but
Give them. Oh, I want to hear them
okay,
all.
all right. Well, the website, you mentioned that already, and thank you for that, joegardner.com. It's a
JoeGardner.com.
good hub because there we link to some of the other places. But there is a lot of information on that site that will, if you put in a search term for whatever's on your mind related to gardening into the box, you're going to get a lot of video opportunities, podcast opportunities, blog posts, etc. So beyond the website, there are 2 YouTube channels. One is Joe Gardener TV. So it's how to and DIY videos, 3 to 5 minutes, something like that. And then my television show that I mentioned earlier, Growing a Greener World, the one that's I started in 2010 and won the Emmy in. All of our episodes are on a YouTube channel called GGW TV.
Okay.
And you can stream until you're sick of streaming. I mean, you think Netflix has a lot of options. We've got 200 something episodes, full-length episodes on every show we've ever done over 10 years or more, 12 years. And so that's 3. The podcast, there, as you mentioned, thank you for that, 400 almost episodes of any gardening topic and beyond that you can think of. There's a tie into gardening on every one, but there's a lot of information there. And then the Online Gardening Academy, for those diehards that really want to go deep on a gardening topic, in 2018, I started creating online courses that delved deeper into particular subjects that I knew people wanted to know more about. And I told you about my dad. My mother was a high school teacher, the smartest woman I ever knew. And she was a great teacher. And I love to teach. And I think I got a little bit of that from her. And now we have 6 courses and thousands of students, and they all return to get the next thing we produce. And I love teaching to it's a smaller audience relative to a television audience, but it's an engaging audience, and they love it. I love it. And it's exciting. So there's layers and
Wow.
depths of what you can learn through our resources.
Dare I say, it's easy to get into the weeds with Joe Gardner. Is that a fair statement?
I like it. Yeah, that's a
Hey,
good statement.
okay, Joe, one silly thing that I have to ask. I have a difficult time remembering the difference between annuals and perennials. To me, the definition of those 2 words don't jive with what the actual words are. Is there an easy way to remember the difference between annuals and perennials?
The simplest thing is an annual.
Other than just figure it out.
Okay, well, let me ask you. Let me throw this back at you. If something is called an annual versus something that's called a perennial, just what comes to mind off the top of your head? What's the difference?
I mean, I know where you're going with this, but to me, just off the top of my head, if I don't really want to think about something, annual is like it just happens every year. You don't worry about it. It's the annual golf event. It's the annual. That's what comes to my mind. Annual just happens.
Okay, and the perennial
which
event,
is the opposite.
The perennial event. What happens with the perennial event? The 50th anniversary of our something. The annual lives its whole life in 1 year, on one season. Basically, it grows from a seed, it lives its life, it produces a flower and a seed or fruit, and it dies. Basically, its life occurs over the period of 1 year or less. A perennial comes back every year. Basically, it either doesn't die back, so it lives its life like an annual in a course of a year, but it doesn't die back. It's not done. It could die back to the roots, But in year 2, 3, 4, and 5, it's coming back up because the life is still there in the soil and the roots, and it is has a, you say a perennial life. How long? How many years is that? It depends, but
True.
it's not just one.
Joe Gardner, I'm a huge fan. Thank you for spending time with me today on our show. And again, if you want to get a hold of Joe, you want to see his magic. Again, the first Emmy Award winner on the Retirement for Life podcast. What a thrill it was. JoeGardner.com. Guys, thanks a lot for listening. And Joe, thanks for being on the show today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for asking great questions and giving me an opportunity to talk about what I love more than anything else.
All right. Take care,
All right.
Joe. Thanks.
See you later.
Okay, everybody. So that was Joe Gardner. I truly hope you enjoyed that. I mean, an Emmy Award-winning guest. That's the first for Sear Financial or for the Retirement for Life podcast. But I venture to say, Brooke, I challenge you. Let's get another Emmy Award winner on the Retirement for Life podcast, shall we?
Deal.
All right. Check us out on aimassessment.com. Check us out on retirementforlife.com. That's where we're at. Our shows are all on rflshow.com. You can watch all of the podcasts we've made. High quality podcasts. I hope you enjoy them. Go out and check us out and give us a view. Give us a like. Follow us. That would be helpful. So have a great day, and we'll see you in our next episode. Take care.
Investment advisory services provided by Sear Financial, Inc., SEC registered investment advisor. All content on this podcast is for information purposes only and should not be considered investment, legal, or tax advice. Material presented is believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations are made by our firm as to another party's informational accuracy or completeness.